All right, I'm going to go ahead and call our meeting to order. This is our January 7th work session for our town council meeting. So we could have a roll call, please.
Shannon? Leek? Panthy?
Here.
Leek?
Here.
Edwards?
Here.
Cavazos? Day?
Here. Okay, and just for the record, Steve mentioned, or gave me a call that he's running delayed, as well as Councilman Leek coming for this evening. Our agenda items, we'll first start out with our Haymarket Day 2019 event date.
So, good evening, Council. Based on the feedback we received from Haymarket Day 2018 and our postponement date due to the hurricane, we actually had a lot of our vendors really like the new date due to the weather. They liked that it was a little bit cooler, they felt it was a better time, and that they had better turnout. So we are proposing to move Haymarket Day 2019 and all other Haymarket Days to fall on the third Saturday of October. I think this will work better with the time of year, getting into school, just starting, things like that, the weather. And also, another discussion item maybe we think about is, do we want to change the time to be 10 to 5 instead of 9 to 4? Because of it getting darker earlier and staying darker later. In other words, setup this year was pretty dark for most of our vendors. It didn't really start to get light until about 7:30, 8 o'clock-ish.
So what does that mean the parade time would be?
The parade time, I think, we can talk with Chief how the breakdown, all of that stuff went, but I think we talked about moving it back up to 10:30, have it kind of start our event off, and then that way, one of the things we heard from a lot of vendors is they were right in the middle of their kind of busy time at lunchtime. A lot of people were shopping, and then we had to shoo them away to get the parade through, so that caused a little bit of difficulty. So put the parade back up at the front, and then that gives everyone the opportunity to walk back up in and get lunch and really do their shopping at that prime time.
I think so
Okay.
too.
And although that would be a little more difficult for the police department, we will make it work because of the large amount of vendor feedback that said having it at that time kind of messed them up a little bit. So we'll make it work. We worked out a plan last year that worked well this year, and I think will work even if we have parade and vendor traffic at the same time.
Okay.
And I think the feedback also, just for record, it wasn't just the vendors. It was the residents, it was the participants, it was the people that came out.
That was my question, too.
Yeah, it was definitely, there was an overall sense of this is really good.
I
Yeah.
had positive feedback from my neighbors, so
Yep. Yeah.
everybody seemed to like it.
So with no objection, I think that's something that we'll definitely consider as we move it to
It will
the.
not be that cold, right, in the October?
There, that does have a little risk.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
kind of live it,
Hit
you
or
know.
miss. We got lucky that day. It was nice weather, and then I do think the next day it was about 10 degrees colder. But in general, it's pretty
cooler.
moderate.
We can do
nice
more of a
weather.
fall festival kind
Yeah.
of thing as opposed to.
So this year we kind of did the Americana theme. Next year I think it would open us up if we wanted to do, like you said, a fall festival theme. But I think it gives people the opportunity to come enjoy themselves and not get hot and overheated. Like September, that asphalt just, the heat rises. And
Yeah, I was going to mention for the officers that are protecting the area.
Remind me
with-
again, what was the original date again?
the original
Just make
date
sure I got that.
was the second Saturday of September,
Third.
third Saturday?
Yeah.
Third Saturday of September. And the new proposed is the third October, Saturday of October.
So we are pursuing 1 month.
Yeah.
Would it be, because again, we're kind of, like, September's can be really, really hot, right? So that's what we're
Yes.
trying to avoid,
Right.
but a month later, it can be really, really cold.
Cold, yeah.
Is there maybe a happy medium in there? Maybe
Potentially.
this-
So one thing we did discuss is with Columbus Day falling in there, that being a 3-day weekend, a lot of government workers around this area, we didn't feel that that would be a wise decision. Some people do take some vacations, so we were worried about numbers. That would leave us with the fourth Saturday of September, and then sometimes I think falls with the first of October.
Did we run the numbers? What was the weather past like a couple days for those October?
I certainly can look it up, but
Yeah.
we didn't.
Yeah, let's compare those to that time. We don't want to be too cold time. You know, lots of people, oh, it's cold, I don't want to go out. You know, we want to bring everybody in.
And did we, I'm sure you probably did, but check to make sure it's not like Fall Festival and
Different areas.
Manassas. And I think Occoquan is September as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
I mean, you're not going to get a free weekend from
Right.
everything, but
I see Columbus Day would be October the 14th,
Correct.
so you could do, like you say, the first Saturday in October?
that's Manassas,
Oh, is that, oh, I see.
yeah.
It's also our breast cancer wall.
I
Yes,
gotcha.
that was the other
It's
thing.
all about Chief.
We also
No,
were,
I'm just
I'll
kidding.
push it if you
I'm
want to do
kidding
that.
you.
we were
I'm
also
kidding
trying
you.
to work around Chiefs events.
Sure. So last week of September or the third week in October?
And the average high temperature in October in Virginia is 69.5 degrees, and the annual low is 48. So, I'm
That's
sorry,
not-
the
Not too
average
bad.
is 59.
Yeah, so that's not bad.
Okay.
And I can certainly look into it more. What we were hoping, and since you guys are all here, January 16th, we wanted to have a meeting to discuss the event calendar. So we're hoping to go ahead and get the new date out early, the best we can, and help our vendors, participants, and then outside community groups go ahead and start planning for the date change.
Okay.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions regarding this?
No.
All right. We'll move on. Councilman Leak had asked me if we could pull this item, the town building official discussion, and put it on our next work session agenda. Of course, with no objection, we'll go ahead and do that.
I know that I spoke with Ashley Gray from the Ash Salon, and she was asking me about the current status of that, and I asked her if she had been reached out to, because I think at our last
Yeah,
meeting,
I was
someone
hoping to get
supposed
with a
to.
meeting. Uh-huh.
But she said that she hadn't talked to anyone, and so I promised her that I would bring it up at this meeting to find out what the status was of that, and
Okay.
hopefully someone can contact her, because you know that she's really hoping to move forward
Right.
and needs as much support and help as she can get from the
Right.
town.
Absolutely. So, Emily or Jerry, we can schedule or see if you can reach out and schedule that. I'll make my schedule open
Okay.
as early as even tomorrow, so.
Okay.
Okay. Next is our park playground proposal.
Okay, so we've been working with Play World, or Playground Specialists, and they're a company that focuses on doing playgrounds for all sorts of communities, whether it be municipalities, schools, or other community neighborhood parks. So what we've come up with is this option one is a playground that will roughly allow for 30 to 35 children to play at one time. The center, piece of equipment right here is geared towards the 5 to 12-year-old age range. It allows for roughly 25 kids to play on at a time. And there are other features that would be okay for younger children to play, but it is geared for 5 to 12. We've added in these little bouncers right here. These are for the smaller toddlers to have supervised play with a parent. And then over here, we've also added in the swing set with the infant swing so that the whole family has a little something to do. So this is option one. If you look at the proposal in the packet, it's going to be roughly $30,000. This is something that I've worked closely with our rep, Evan, on. And previously, we had it a little lower. There was a sale going on. He said there is a potential for another one to come up soon. So we could be a little lower depending on the sale of this main piece of equipment here. And we did another option because I spoke with Councilman Leak, and he was interested in knowing that we could provide something that's ADA accessible for children in our community who need that resource. So we've come up with option 2 here. And so at first I started looking into wheelchair accessible swings. So a wheelchair accessible swing, if you haven't seen them, is a entire unit added on, usually to this side of a swing. And it allows for a ramp system so that a child in a wheelchair can get onto the ramp, and then they're safely in there, and they're able to swing like another child would on the regular swings here. This company does not offer that feature. They are able to work with a third-party group, so we can purchase third-party and then install it. They also have standalone swings like that. But what I worked with Evan on is this piece of equipment right here. They call it the Unity Rocker. It allows for a child with special needs or ADA accessibility needs to get on the piece of equipment and have other children playing with him or her at the same time. So it allows for the kind of inclusion aspect of it, whereas the wheelchair swing sometimes keeps them secluded. They don't have that interaction time. However, with the Unity Rocker, the child would need to be able to have an adult or someone able to help them onto the equipment, or they would need to be able to kind of lift themselves onto it and off. So that is one thing to consider. I'm certainly happy to go back to Evan and talk about more options for handicap accessibility. There are a couple others that are more climbing equipment or equipment that they utilize their upper body strength, but there's not a lot right now for wheelchairs to get on the equipment.
Does this like spin? Is it like a merry-go-round?
So
Is it like,
It rocks back and forth.
okay.
I don't know that it
I see the springs
spins
underneath
around.
it.
Yeah, I don't think it spins around. I think it's stationary, so you can't get on it and go and go and go.
Mhm.
But you can rock back and forth in just about any direction.
I can see other people trying to launch things off of it. I'm
Yeah.
just,
So total capacity is 30,
for the whole playground.
whole playground. And a square foot is at 2160.
And we did, with Planning Commission, we have talked about, this is just phase 1. Once we have more money budgeted for the park and we're able to get some of our other site improvements done up there, we hope to expand it to add more features or see, maybe in a couple of years the playground is enough. But there are other options. Evan was explaining to me this piece of equipment here with the slides, they also offer features that you can add on, additional slides, additional ramps and climbing features, so you're not buying brand new, you can
Okay.
add on to it,
Okay.
as long as you keep with the same manufacturer.
What's the life expectancy of something like this, did he say?
He did not say, I want to say in their manuals it runs about 10 years, and with the proper maintenance, inspections, things like that.
Maintenance cost. Is that maintenance cost?
So the maintenance cost, one of the things also to bring up is we did not go with the rubber matting. That was an additional about $25,000.
It's really expensive.
So if you switch to the wood chips, you'll see in both of the proposals that the wood carpet is roughly $3,700. So that will be our biggest maintenance cost. Each year, we might have to bring in additional wood carpeting, so the wood chips. But we would have an inspector come out, assess it, and the place that we probably needed the most is under the swings
swings.
here, where the kids kick it out, or around the edges here when they carry it out or throw it out of the.
Okay.
So depending on wear and tear with the wood carpeting, it could be $1,000 here and there annually to replace.
Basically, yearly, we are talking about $4,000 maintenance cost.
Yearly would be about $1,000.
Oh, yearly about 1,000. Okay.
We would also look at installing a fence around the playground, since it would be in close proximity to Washington Street. We want to ensure the safety of all of the children. So we are going to work with the ARB to come up with a fence design that works well with keeping kids in, but looks aesthetically pleasing. Are there any other questions or ideas?
Did we work with this company, or do you have anybody else?
So right now I've worked with this company. They're the ones, they've reached out to us and we've worked with them in the past on coming up with design proposals. I can get a second bid, but they are one of the top in the industry.
Okay.
Emily, who would you use like to inspect a playground like this? Is there a special, does the
So-
county do it? Do we?
I believe Roberto, does our insurance person provide?
Our insurance will do an annual inspection.
Okay,
That's not the inspection for the equipment.
No, it's not the inspection for the equipment, but they will inspect it to make sure for liabilities, because they're going to be insuring it part of the part to make sure it meets standards. I think.
And
County
then
does inspection.
the county does inspections
Okay.
and this company, Evan, is a inspector, and if we work with him and we go through them and purchase, he could be our inspector for the equipment.
and one more question, a good point, I forgot about the whole insurance thing. What is that gonna run per year?
With our current policies, it would be covered. I can request a.
It would be
more-
covered?
Yes, it would be
Okay.
covered, but I can request more in writing if you would like to see that too. But I had spoken to Kathy, our representative, and she said that that would be covered with our current policy.
Okay. Thank you. Good work.
More questions? All right, thank you very much. Okay, our next item is actually, sorry, let me take the mic here. Our next item, McDonald's second drive-through lane, we're going to go ahead and pull that for the email that we received today, so we'll take that off, which will bring us up to our next, go ahead, I'm sorry, was
Just
there
real
something
quick,
else?
I'd like to add for
Sure.
everyone, the engineer for the McDonald's special use permit has been working with McDonald's. However, they weren't able to yet come up with a solution. They do, however, like closing the first entryway, working on the second, so they're gonna prepare more materials, change the site plan, and wanna come back and present it to you guys
Oh,
in
okay.
February. So, we're doing a little more homework there.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Next, we have the honor of having Delegate Danica Rome here to speak to us. Welcome. Thanks for coming out.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great, thank you. Well, nice to see you, Mayor, nice to see you,
Yeah.
council members. Just for the folks who are,
Yeah.
just for the folks who are listening back home, I'm just gonna kind of stay here and not do anything for a moment. Actually, if you can go into my email, or actually, if we can go to lis.virginia.gov. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Basically, I want to use the presentation thing so I can show you two of the bills that I'm working on that directly deal with the town.
Okay.
So we're going to do that. Actually, no, I'll be, I can stand up for that. start here, who's our tech person? Besides Steve, what's on my screen here?
grab the top of the screen and kind of slide it to the right. And you just drag it all the way.
Oh, okay, hold on. All right, I don't know how wildly helpful that's gonna be, but we're just gonna, I'll read it to you and I'll let you know what my amendment to this portion is. So the first thing here that we'll be filing is gonna be dealing with the I-66 corridor related to the power lines. So just to give you all a little bit of history of what happened last year and what I'm trying to do with this. Last year, when the bill that came up in front of the House of Delegates to deal with, it was SB 966 and its House bill counterpart before that final bill was passed, the original version of that bill included language that said participation in the pilot program for the hybrid route to go between I-66 and Haymarket for the Dominion transmission line shall not preclude the placing of current or future overhead transmission facilities along that corridor. So I called that out on the House floor because for those of us who have been around here for a long time, and I covered it in 2006 as well as the 2014 issue when I was lead reporter of the Gainesville Times, and as you all are very thoroughly well aware, the I-66 corridor has been proposed for multiple above-ground, very high-power tower lines, transmission lines. And we're talking about in 2006, when I was covering this as a 22-year-old rookie reporter, it was 155 feet high that they were proposing. This time around, 110 feet high, right? So they put this little tiny clause into that bill, one sentence, and this is why we always read the bills in Richmond before we vote on them. And I called this out on the House floor, saying that this basically defeats the entire purpose of the bill. If you're going to have this entire section about the hybrid route transmission line, you can't just make it so that you can build above-ground lines later. So I put in a request that basically said, okay, what happened in this case is after I gave my House floor speech, the bill passes through the House, then they strike this entire sentence out. Well, I spent 13 years in Catholic school, and we call that sin by omission. Just because you didn't talk about it doesn't mean that you explicitly banned it. And so what I'm trying to do with this bill is to ban above-ground transmission line facilities along the I-66 corridor so we can stop having this fight. We've been doing this now for 13 years, going back to 2006. The town residents are tired of this. The greater Haymarket community is tired of this. I've got people all the way out from the mountains to down in Gainesville to 29 to Carver Road. Everyone here is tired of dealing with this, whether you're in Somerset, whether you're along the Madison corridor. So my proposal here is a little bit different than what's showing up here in the draft request. The draft request says approval by the State Corporation Commission of a proposed transmission line for inclusion in this program shall, 1, preclude the placing of existing or future overhead electrical transmission lines between 69 kilovolts and 230 kilovolts in the same area or corridor by other transmission projects, and 2, not preclude the placement of electrical distribution lines in the same area or corridor. What I'm doing with this, the amendment that I've requested is going to change that language to one sentence to make it like this. Approval by the State Corporation Commission of a proposed transmission line for inclusion in this program shall, 1, preclude the placement of future overhead electrical transmission lines. Basically, if it's current, I mean, there's nothing we can do if there's already a plan for something. We're not going to get into that fight. The point is to ban it for the future. And number 2, instead of it saying between 69 kilovolts and 230 kilovolts, yes, that's the size of the lines that we've been dealing with for the last few years, but instead I decided to just consolidate that because a transmission line is anything above 69 kilovolts or above. So what I just wrote in this version of it is shall preclude the placement of future overhead electrical transmission lines of at least 69 kilovolts in the same area or corridor. Same area or corridor. Because we're not dealing with this in Carver again, we're not dealing with this in Somerset again, we're not dealing with this in Madison again, we're not dealing with this along I-66 again. The residents have spoken, no one wants to have to deal with above ground transmission lines going through this property anymore. We're done with that. And so that's the point of this. And the second part should not preclude the placement of electrical distribution lines in the same area or corridor. The point of that is when we're talking about electrical distribution lines, we are talking about your everyday utility lines. No one here that I remember through 9 years, 2 months, and 2 weeks of reporting the news here, nor in my time in public office here, has complained to me about regular-sized utility poles coming up along the I-66 corridor. No one, that's not a huge deal. But I do have a lot of our joint constituents along Jordan Lane who do have very grave concerns right now about even the hybrid route going through either their backyards or very close to their backyards. We've got one constituent, Brian Riley, who lives right in that area, and last year, him and I went out with a tape measure, and we measured 50 feet from the north sound wall. And by the time we got out to Jordan Lane with that, you could see that if you measured from the south, from the sound wall north, that construction zone, the right-of-way that Dominion told us that they need, which is 40 feet of Dominion right-of-way and 10 feet of temporary right-of-way as well, would go right on Jordan Lane. But if you measure it out from the wire fence that's near the sound wall, so if you go a few more feet out and you were to measure up north that way, it is a soccer ball tap away from his kid's swing set. You want all that drilling going along where your kids are playing in the backyard? You want to have giant electrical transmission lines, and the transmission lines, we're not talking about rinky-dink lines here, we're talking about the big ones here. That's unacceptable. We don't want that. And at the same time, I'm right now working with Dominion to keep this thing as close to the wall as humanly possible, to keep it out of our constituents' yards so it doesn't affect their quality of life, and at the same time it doesn't damage their property values, nor does it damage the environment to whatever extent we can make that happen. So in doing that, I held a town hall meeting over at Gainesville Middle School a couple months ago with Dominion, where we had some town residents and we had a couple other folks actually show up so that we could just ask them questions about the routing for this. One of the other 1,000 reasons that I voted against that Dominion bill in the first place was they never actually established what the routing was going to be for that line by the time we voted on it. And at the same time, they had never at any point gotten a ruling from the SEC that Amazon had proven adequate need for the project in the first place. That's why I set up to kill the project in its entirety, not just above ground, below ground, because they had never proven the need for it, so I didn't think it should have existed. Well, this bill basically said, all right, well, go on ahead, and at the same time, it did not mandate that Dominion participate in the pilot program. So what ended up happening, well, you had negotiations behind the scenes afterward, where Dominion basically asked the Coalition Protect Prince William County and Prince William County as a whole to drop the argument of need in order for the hybrid route to go in. And so, well, they did, and that's what's now happening. So that's the first bill, is to make sure that we don't have to deal with future above-ground transmission lines along the I-66 corridor. Does anyone have any questions about that bill? Or any comments or feedback about it? Okay, so Mayor, what I'll do for you guys here is once my final draft request comes back, which should be by tomorrow, and I actually go to publish this thing, I'm going to send a copy to y'all. And if you would like to endorse it with a formal resolution so that I can bring it in front of the Commerce and Labor Committee when that comes up, that would be wildly helpful. And given that this is not the size and scope of some of the legislation I was dealing with last year, including the interveners bill, that this is much simpler. Basically, the point that we're going to make down in Richmond is like, okay, you got what you wanted. You got your hybrid route. You got your lines buried. If everyone is truly working in good faith, no one will oppose this bill. No one should oppose this bill if we are genuinely working in good faith. I don't care what your party identification is. I don't care what your ideology is. We all have a common good here in protecting our constituents from those above-ground power towers from ever coming back for any other project to this area. So does anyone have any questions with that statement?
Just what's your sense? I mean, have you reached out, obviously, to other, do you feel that this is going to be, should be a slam dunk?
We never use the
assume
phrase
that.
slam dunk in Richmond.
Yeah.
No. You never, ever use that, especially when your bill goes in front of the Commerce and Labor Committee. You don't ever say that phrase. No. Instead, what we say is this is a reasonable bill that should not, in theory, have major opposition to it, because we've already sorted this issue out. In theory, we are already good. Now, I talked to Supervisor Pete Caitlin about this at length about this bill, and he's on board as well in the general concept of it.
So we can get the county support, maybe with a
We
resolution
should.
as well?
One of the things that I would request with this is at least give me the town support. That would be great. The political reality in the Virginia General Assembly is that our current Board of County Supervisors is not always well received in the Virginia General Assembly. And while I would love to have the support of our local elected officials here, I want to make sure at the same time that what I'm doing here is going to be as much focused on taking care of our residents rather than making sure that, basically that we gum up anything in politics. What happened in the last General Assembly session, unfortunately with our chairman waving a roll of toilet paper outside the General Assembly building, that did not help. That was wildly unhelpful. And that sort of behavior cannot happen again in the Virginia General Assembly if we expect to have successful legislation for our residents here. That's just trying to keep it real with y'all.
What are the odds that some erroneous thing is going to get attached to this?
Oh, that would not be the case.
Okay.
No, so the Virginia General Assembly doesn't quite work in the same way that you'll see in Congress, where you might see, like, a lot of completely unnecessary riders, for example. Because in Virginia, any additions that you would have to make to this would have to be germane to the bill. And the Speaker of the House can actually rule that something is not germane to the legislation and thus kill it on, by the time it gets to the House, if it were to get to the House floor in that case. So far, I have not received any opposition from this. I've only heard encouraging words, so this is good. And at the same time, I also learned in my first year, don't ever think anything that is as simple as I could try to name this the Chuck Colgan Town Hall, and we might have a problem. Don't bank on anything happening in Richmond until it has been signed by the governor. Once it is signed into law, then I can give you the assurance that everything will be okay. In the meantime, what I can tell you is I'm going to work as hard as I can to make sure that this happens.
You get that to us, we'll have a quick turnaround, as we've always done for resolutions that
Yep, that'll be great.
support this. Okay.
Okay, so next bill that I want to bring to y'all's attention here.
And just for time-wise, too, I'll just let you know, we got probably like 8-10 minutes.
Okay.
No problem.
For this next one, we'll just, could anyone even see what the thing
No.
is?
We can't see it, no.
All right, I'll just kind of basically read you off what I'm working on. I know earlier this year I had some constituent requests that came out of the town regarding the planning commission, and hey, you guys used less than 100 days, a lot of issues that came up with that. So I came up with as easy of a fix of this so that the state provides you all proper guidance in the first place, and that we don't have fights that go out into the newspapers or any of that sort of thing. The basic point of the bill that I'm going to be putting in regarding the planning commission, I'm just going to read it to you. This is just regarding review. Let me see if I can get this thing to actually open here. Okay, so the phrase that it says is, no zoning ordinance shall be amended or reenacted unless the governing body has referred the proposed amendment or reenactment to the local planning commission for its recommendations. This is current law, everything I'm reading right now. Failure of the commission to report 100 days after the first meeting of the commission after the proposed amendment or reenactment has been referred to the commission, or such shorter period as may be prescribed by the governing body, shall be deemed approval unless the proposed amendment or reenactment has been withdrawn by the applicant prior to the expiration of the time period. All of that is current code. That is already what is the law in Virginia. The two sentences of addition that I have for this. The governing body shall hold at least one public hearing on a proposed reduction of the commission's review period. Sentence number 2. The governing body shall publish a notice of public hearing in a newspaper having general circulation in the locality at least 2 weeks prior to the public hearing date. In short, I'm trying to give you all the easiest way in the future so that no one has any complaints, that our constituents basically say, yes, we had adequate notice, everyone's happy, and we keep peace in the valley. So basically, just have a public hearing. And typically, having sat in these chairs covering for public hearings for a long time, we're dealing with an issue here that rarely ever comes up. I don't even remember that issue ever coming up in the 9 years that I covered this. Like, this is just a one-time thing that we're trying to prevent, having an issue to come up in the future. And second, that it's a very relatively easy, quick fix. Any questions?
No, I just think we'll get with staff and
Sure.
understand that and bring it back to the council.
Yeah, sure. I mean, this one is, again, this is another one of those super innocuous bills that, fortunately, this one should, in theory, go through the County, Cities, and Towns Committee. Again, I don't get to assign where the bills go. That's what the Speaker of the House does. But it should, in theory, go into County, Cities, and Towns. I sit on that committee, and I sit in the number 2 subcommittee on there, which basically means that I'll be able to work with the council. I can work with anyone else to make sure that this thing, number one, doesn't get gummed up and that there's not unnecessarily things that happen to it. Because one of the things that we do know that happens is that if you request a charter change, all sorts of things happen. There's all sorts of fears that people have. We're not doing that with this one. We're just going to try to lay out a very easy process where we say, this is what state law is. Here's how everyone can agree that you have public notice and that we have peace in the valley. And if anyone has any complaints, well, you've published it, you've held the public hearing, and you go on with your day.
Right.
All right, so any questions on that? Okay, so other stuff that we're going to be focusing on, just so you guys know in the last couple of minutes that I have here. Number one, tax policy is going to be the big thing that's going to be coming up this year. This is going to be, probably for the first 3 weeks here, this is going to be the major fight that we're going to be having down there, or debate, whatever line of rhetoric you want to use on this. What's basically happening here is that because of the federal tax bill that went through, people who would itemize their taxes at the state level will now be disincentivized from doing that and filing they'll be filing for the standard deduction instead, which basically means that their federal tax bill might be lower, but then their state tax bill might be higher. So we have to, one, deal with conformity on that. And then second, we have a plethora of different options, ideas on what to do with, one, the revenue that would actually come out of this in the first place. Number two, whether to actually allow Virginians to itemize their state returns while using standard deduction on their federal returns, which actually can get kind of messy. Or three, should we have a different look at what we're going to do here? The plan I support, and all of this is subject to change, because once Wednesday happens, it's Richmond. Welcome to Crazy Town. Anything can change. The plan I like is one that raises the standard deduction, $1,500 for single filers, $3,000 for joint filers, and at the same time offers more of a refund for the earned income tax credit. The reason I say both of these is because in the 13th district, I've got a lot of people from all sides of the economic spectrum. I've got nearly 6,000 constituents who would benefit from being able to refund more of the earned income tax credit. It's actually about nearly 6,000 people who actually qualify for it, and about 2/3 of them would actually qualify for this additional refund. And at the same time, I've got a lot of constituents who could really use that standard deduction being raised too. That's the sort of idea that I want. I want to take care of all my constituents, not pick one part against the other. So I've even called the House Finance Committee chairman. I talked to him on the phone. His name's Lee Ware from Powhatan, and I've told him, hey, I want to work with you in a bipartisan way to find a way that we can get something done that's a win for all of our constituents. Help me out and help me help you. So that's going to be one of the big things that we're going to be dealing with. Aside from that, do you all have any questions? Anything else that you want to know for Richmond?
Looks like, yeah.
Okay, so just in recap for the people who are listening and for the folks here at the dais, if you have any constituent service requests, anything that you need me to take care of, please let me know at DeldRoem, that's spelled DeldRoem, at house.virginia, spelled out, .gov. So it's DeldRoem at house.virginia.gov. At the same time on lis.virginia.gov, you can find my office number as well as my district line. And I am in East 221, East 221 in the Pocahontas building. So please come on down, come visit. We always love having constituents. And when you do come to my office, you sit in the good chair because it is your office, not just mine. And with that, it is I'm grateful to serve you all every day. And thank you so much for allowing me to have the time to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One other point I
Yeah.
forgot to make is, I think your assistant, we were looking at working with the county with that MDU, the mobile data unit
Oh, yeah.
fees.
Okay.
So
Sure.
we definitely want to keep the pressure there to possibly get that reduction for the town residents here that
Well, I'll tell you, just
Great.
follow up with me offline. Let's take
Yep.
care of it, and let's make sure that everyone wins.
Great, all right, good
Cool.
deal.
All right,
Well,
thank
thank
you.
you, thank you very much for coming out. Absolutely. Okay, I think this would end our agenda items here for our work session. So with no objection, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn our work session. Thank you very much. We're going to have a brief 15-minute intermission here before our 7 o'clock regular scheduled town council meeting. Thank you all.